for both of you, Durga and Lily, your relationship seems so close just from meeting you, and I'd love to hear more about both of your perspectives about your working relationship and collaboration process.
Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually had the advantage of having known each other prior to working on the film together. Durga and I actually met in this very serendipitous way when I was only a child through my cousin and one of Durga's close friends. So I had been aware of Durga and her career as a writer for my entire adolescence. And I'd always admired her and thought of her as just like the coolest person for the longest time. So then, yeah, having the opportunity to collaborate on this together was made that much more special, just having that kind of like personal bond from so young.
Yeah, Lily and I go way back. Can I say?
Sure.
I was like her babysitter, so like way back. But she was a precocious New York kid, so it wasn't really babysitting. It was more like living vicariously through that level of coolness. And yeah, so we spent time together just playing with her brother Roger. And I'd kept kind of tabs on her. Sometimes you just meet people who you know are really special, and Lily has this extraordinary energy and elegance. Like, I often say that she either reminds me of like Audrey Hepburn or like Popeye's olive oil. Like, she can like go between both.
The greatest compliment. Thank you.
Spectrum. And I think Miyako even like dressed her in one scene reminiscent of olive oil. So I sort of, she's just a really exciting person to be around. And I guess you've all seen the movie. Like, I can't really look away from her. She provides a lot, and she's very porous, which is a really good energy to be around when you're working with another artist, like an openness. And yeah, we've just become even closer, and I think she's going to go on to do really fantastic things.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Love you.
I'd love to talk about the rest of the cast as well. Chloe and Claes, what an incredible cast. What was the process like for finding them and getting them on board, and how long did that take? And what was it like working with them?
Like any film, there's many false starts, and a film has many lifetimes. Chloe was someone that from a very early stage, even when we were just kind of outlining the film, that Katie, our producer who's here, after reading simply an outline of where I wanted to take the story, kind of threw Chloe's name in as a possible. And I think it was a mixture of the Chloe that we'd read about growing up in Darien, Connecticut, and having one background, sort of, and how that could kind of, again, be additive to this character. Her elegance. Also, for me personally, working with an actor who's also a director was really, especially for my first film, was really helpful and inspiring. Going to set every day to work with her is on your first film. I mean, there's not really much like it. But she also, like I said, had opinions about the flower arrangements, the way a shirt was tucked in or not tucked in, all these little things that are really visual. And I find all that kind of stuff really fun because it means you're really collaborating at a detail level, which is sort of the most exciting thing for me. And with Claes, and I'd love you to talk about him too, but he came on board really, really early and was extremely passionate about it and really wanted to make this film. And like myself, was such a fan of father-daughter films, like the canon of father-daughter films that exist out there, and building that with me, and was really open when I called him one day and I was like, Claes, I think Raymond's exercise is ballet. What do you think? He was like, great, I'll get a ballet teacher. Like, he was very excited by any zags that we took with the character throughout the lengthy process of making this film. And so that was always really encouraging.
Yeah, I had and have looked up to Chloe for as long as I can remember. She's like, as somebody who grew up in New York, she's sort of the quintessential cool kid. Her entire body of work was a huge influence and inspiration for me, getting into acting, and it was sort of a bucket list actor to act alongside. So having the opportunity to play alongside her as my Anne was like, yeah, a total dream come true, as was most of this entire experience. And I think I was able to kind of channel that existing admiration for Chloe into our characters' relationships. I think Cecile is really seeking out a way to define her own femininity through Anne, which I certainly was able to sort of like borrow pieces from my own personal relationship to Chloe for that. So yeah, it was just it fit together like so perfectly. I'm so grateful that it all fell together that way. And for Clace, it was sort of the our characters' relationship. It was critical to establish that sort of intimacy and shared language, and sort of Durga and I even spoke about us as sort of like cowboys, or kind of like these loners who sort of move through life together, and have such a closeness, and such a closeness you can really feel on screen in order to have this sense of like stability and sanctuary for Anne to really like shake up. So we spent a lot of time together leading up to shooting. We were able to get to Cassis a few weeks before we actually started filming to just hang out and get to know each other as people and sort of establish that closeness.
I love that. And going off of, you said, the father-daughter film canon, and there's obviously coming-of-age themes in the film. Were there any films and filmmakers that influenced you in general or this film?
Yeah, many. This question always throws me because I can't remember anything, and then I say something that's like was kind of an afterthought, and then after I realized that I was like a lie, actually.
Take your time.
No lying.
Bear with me. There's some pretty obvious choices, I guess, like Maurice Pialat's "À nos amours" was a huge reference for myself in the writing process, but then working closely with our cinematographer, Maximilian Pittner, that film came up a lot. We knew that there was like this long, in the same tradition of father-daughter films, there's a long history of like Somerset, La Piscine type films, Romer films, and we wanted to acknowledge their presence in our imagination, but maybe also kind of recast what the south of France could look like or feel like. So some films that had like darker interiors really interested us for no other reason than it's so hot there and there's no air conditioning. It was all very practical in our thinking, even though we tried to keep it romantic. Like, you have to have the curtains closed, and what does that do to an interior space? But individual shots, what comes to mind? Oh, when Cecile's climbing the white rocks at the end, I remember we had watched Claire Denis' Chocolat, and we had really loved how white was used. And something as small like that was kind of really interesting, because when we were scouting, we really intentionally chose locations that had white-looking rocks, because in the script I had written like they were kind of more like a lunar landscape as opposed to like ruddier red rocks. I don't know, little things like that I kind of got attached to and made everyone have to do. Things like that. But yeah, there were so many references, and not all of them are like immediately come to mind right now, or like obvious references. But yeah, I love movies.
Oh, the wind-up toys.
Oh, yeah. Well, some stuff I just actually like stole. I love Summertime, the film Summertime, and there's a scene where Katharine Hepburn is kind of, these wind-up toys are just presented on a table in front of her, and I think any movie I make will always have toys in it, frankly. So casting those wind-up toys was really fun.
Yeah.
I love that. And you mentioned the summertime visuals. The cinematography is so luscious and gorgeous. Can you talk about creating that visual language with your DP?
Max and I spent a long time, honestly, just watching movies. I think we learned early on that while it's really important to kind of work and meet and talk about the film, what's more important is that we build our own language. And the best way for me to kind of build a language before making a movie from the time I was a kid was talking about movies. So we just watched movies and would talk about them. Like we had like a movie club basically. And in watching movies, I think we were able to establish a shorthand. So that like proved to be invaluable like on set when we had to improvise. So many problems come your way, but if you and your DP can just like talk in a language that's almost your secret language, because there's a lot of noise too, your code, I think you can solve any problem. And so for Max and I, it was, we had talked about, there's a lot of like stillness in the film, and we were trying to discuss the challenge of making sort of a still life, but with movement, so you still feel something. And we had talked about some of Ozu's films when it comes to that, and what like the power of a breeze or the power of someone walking in the background, things like that, and stuff that invariably were heightened with our sound designer later. But that was for sure one thing we talked about, was prioritizing stillness in a movie is a challenge for ourselves and the audience. So how are we going to do that in our particular way?
And Lily, I'm curious, during the production, were there any challenges for you, or maybe special moments or magical occurrences that happened during the production?
Oh yes, plenty special moments and magical occurrences. Fewer challenges, I have to admit. I mean, well, representing such an iconic and beloved character was a challenge in itself, just in that I held myself to a really high expectation of doing the original the original author's, Francois Sagan's, character justice in our representation of that. I'm a huge fan of the book as well as Durga's screenplay, which stands on its own as a beautiful piece of art. But I really just wanted to make sure that I served the original source material justice. So I guess that was the biggest challenge for me, mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I guess.
Yeah. And what I love so much about your character, Cecile, is even though she's a teenager, you respect, like Durga, you respect her intelligence, her awareness, and her autonomy. How did you bring Cecile to life?
Oh, well, I did a lot of prep work and spoke a lot with Durga about all of the little details that make up her world. The preparation is one of my favorite parts of this job, and I love doing the sort of anthropology of a character, whether it's like the details of like her shoes, or her favorite foods, or her favorite smells, or I don't know, all of those little details, world building that you do leading up to a shoot, and I certainly did a lot of that. Shooting on location in such a sensual kind of specific place really helped me just sort of like immerse myself in the character and in the world. The tone off set was, and once the camera stopped rolling, wasn't too dissimilar to the kind of tone that Durga built in the script. So like the transition from our downtime into like work was really seamless, and being able to sort of move around the space of Cassis and this like seaside vacation town, sort of in character, even when I was just like in my downtime, was a huge advantage as an actor.